Ladies and gentlemen, you see, in life we are often haunted by what we call problems. We carry them around like burdens, heavy and relentless. We speak of them to anyone who will listen in an attempt to release their weight. But here's the curious thing: by constantly sharing our problems, we often forget one essential truth: they are but fleeting. They are not fixed. They are like waves crashing upon the shore and retreating just as quickly. But if we focus too long on those waves, we lose sight of the vast ocean in which they arise. Life is a constant flow, a river that winds and meanders through many landscapes. And like any river, it is not always calm. Sometimes it is turbulent and full of waves, and at other times it's still and silent. The challenges we face, what we call problems, are like those waves. They come crashing upon us, they stir us up, they make us feel as though we are drowning in them. Yet in truth, these waves are not permanent. They are only fleeting, and much of the time it is the act of speaking about them that prolongs their hold over us. There is something incredibly powerful about silence, something that our busy, noisy world often overlooks. In the midst of our struggles, we might feel compelled to speak out, to tell others what we are going through, to share the weight we carry. And while this is a natural impulse, we should be mindful of the fact that speaking of our problems doesn't always solve them. In fact, it can often have the opposite effect. When we express our troubles to others, we may not release the burden, but instead we reinforce it. The words we speak give our problems a life of their own. They take on a force, an identity that grows the more we feed it. This is especially true when we constantly talk about what's troubling us, as though we are constantly reliving the problem. But silence, the kind of silence that is not oppressive but freeing, is an entirely different matter. It is in the stillness that we can begin to hear ourselves more clearly, to see beyond the distractions of the world. The solution to many of our problems does not lie in endless conversations or external validation. It lies in our ability to turn inward, to connect with the deep well of understanding that resides in each of us. It is only through silence that we can create the space to hear our true selves, free from the noise and chatter of the world. When we speak about our problems too much, we lose sight of their transient nature. A problem, after all, is not a permanent thing. It is a momentary challenge, a brief interruption in the flow of life. Like a wave that crashes upon the shore and retreats, it comes and it goes. But when we speak too often of these troubles, we begin to fixate on them as though they are permanent fixtures of our lives. In truth, they are not. The ebb and flow of life ensures that challenges will arise, but they will also pass. The more we focus on them, the more we hold on to them, as though they are part of our identity. We forget that we are not our problems. We are something far greater than that, something beyond the fleeting moments of hardship. We are the stillness beneath the waves. If we could simply learn to be comfortable in silence, to sit with our problems without the need to vocalize them to others, we would find that our perception of these difficulties shifts. We would begin to see them not as insurmountable obstacles, but as temporary conditions that will eventually fade away. Silence does not mean passivity or avoidance. It is not a way to ignore our problems, but rather a means to acknowledge them without being consumed by them. It is in the stillness that we can find clarity, to truly understand what is at the heart of our struggles, and to see the possibility for transformation. The act of turning inward allows us to reconnect with our own wisdom. We all have an inherent understanding of how to navigate life's challenges, but it is often clouded by the noise of external influences and the distractions of modern life. In silence, we remove those distractions and we reconnect with the deeper part of ourselves. This is where the real answers lie, not in the opinions of others, but in our own inner knowing. By embracing silence, we begin to tap into a wellspring of clarity and insight that helps us see our problems for what they truly are: passing moments in the grand sweep of life. By not speaking of our problems incessantly, we reclaim our power. We no longer hand over the reins to others, asking them to solve what only we can truly understand. We take responsibility for our own journey, for our own growth. We recognize that our problems, while real, are not permanent. They are not the sum of who we are, nor are they a sign of our failure. They are simply opportunities for growth, for learning, for change. And the more we sit with them in silence, the more we allow ourselves to transform. So rather than endlessly talking about the struggles we face, we must learn to embrace the quiet spaces. These are the moments where we can find not only peace, but also the wisdom to rise above our challenges. The power to overcome lies not in the validation of others, but in our own ability to face our difficulties with calm and clarity. In the silence, we discover that we are capable of far more than we think, that within us is the strength to weather any storm, to move through any wave, and to find serenity beyond the turmoil. The nature of problems is often misunderstood. We tend to view them as fixed, permanent obstacles that stand in the way of our peace and happiness. We get so caught up in the struggle that we forget one essential truth: problems, like all things in life, are temporary. They are not set in stone. They are like waves on the ocean, impermanent, constantly shifting, rising and falling with the rhythms of life. But when we focus too much on them, we risk getting lost in the waves and forgetting the vast ocean that holds them. Problems appear in our lives as challenges, difficulties that demand our attention, and sometimes our energy. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that they are a permanent part of our existence, that they define us, or that they will never go away. We can become so absorbed by them that they begin to feel like an unending weight, a constant presence that shapes our thoughts and actions. But the truth is, like everything else in life, problems are in constant motion. They come and go, shifting with time and circumstance. And often the more we dwell on them, the longer they stay. Take a moment to consider the nature of waves in the ocean. When we observe the ocean from the shore, it might seem as though the waves are endless, coming one after another, crashing against the rocks. But the waves are always changing. They may be large and forceful one moment and gentle the next. The ocean itself is vast and continuous, and the waves are just one temporary expression of its flow. In the same way, problems in our lives are temporary expressions of the larger flow of life. They arise, they challenge us, and then they fade away, only to be replaced by new waves, new challenges, and new opportunities for growth. This recognition that problems are not permanent is liberating. When we understand that our struggles are temporary, we begin to shift our perspective. We no longer see ourselves as victims of unending hardship, but as participants in a constantly changing, ever-evolving process. The more we try to hold on to our problems, the more we resist the natural ebb and flow of life. And in doing so, we end up prolonging our suffering. But when we allow ourselves to accept that challenges will come and go, we can meet them with a sense of calm, knowing that they are not permanent features of our lives. When we focus too much on our problems, we often magnify them. What might start as a small issue can grow in our minds into something far more significant, more overwhelming than it truly is. We replay the scenario over and over in our heads, rehashing the details, imagining worst-case scenarios, and creating a narrative that only fuels our anxiety and stress. By focusing on the problem so intensely, we lose sight of the bigger picture. We forget that there is an entire world beyond our troubles, a world that is not defined by what is wrong, but by the richness of what is possible. Instead, when we shift our focus away from the problem itself and toward the broader context of life, we begin to see that problems are simply a part of the human experience. They are not unique to us, they are universal. Every person faces challenges, and every person has their own struggles. What defines us is not the problems we face, but how we respond to them. Do we see them as insurmountable obstacles, or do we recognize them as part of the natural flow of life? Do we allow ourselves to get lost in the waves, or do we see them as temporary and move forward? The more we can detach ourselves from the idea that problems are permanent, the more we can embrace the natural rhythm of life. We can recognize that challenges, though difficult, are part of a process of growth. They push us to develop, to evolve, to become more resilient. They teach us lessons that we may not have learned otherwise. But they are not the end of the story. They are just a chapter, a moment in the ongoing flow of life. One of the most powerful ways to navigate problems is to remember that they are temporary, and that we are constantly changing along with them. Life is not static, it is dynamic. Just as waves rise and fall, so too do our difficulties. What seems impossible today may seem trivial tomorrow, and what feels like an insurmountable challenge in this moment may soon fade into the background of our lives. When we understand that problems are fleeting, we can face them with a sense of ease and acceptance, knowing that they will eventually pass. This understanding also allows us to appreciate the moments when the waves subside and the sea is calm. When the storm is past, we find that we are still here, still standing, still capable of navigating the tides of life. And in those moments of calm, we are reminded of the vastness of our own strength and the vastness of life itself, of the ocean that holds the waves, and of the resilience that holds us as we move through our own challenges. Our thoughts and energy are powerful forces. They shape not only our perceptions of the world, but also the way we engage with it. When we face difficulties, it is natural to want to share our experiences, to seek understanding and validation from others. However, there is a subtle danger in this. The more we talk about our problems, the more energy we expend on them. In doing so, we risk draining ourselves and those around us, perpetuating a cycle of emotional depletion. Rather than finding solutions, we often find ourselves caught in a loop of reinforcement, where our problems grow larger simply because we've given them more attention and energy than they truly deserve. Every thought we have is an expression of energy. And just as we direct energy to a particular task or goal, we direct it to our thoughts. The more attention we give to something, the more energy we invest in it. So when we focus on our problems, talking about them incessantly or dwelling on them in our minds, we feed them, we give them life. The more we think about them, the more real they seem, until they take on a force of their own. What was once a small issue becomes magnified, until it dominates our thoughts and emotions. This is a natural result of how energy flows. The more we invest in something, the more it grows in our minds. Yet the energy we spend on our problems is not infinite. We only have so much to give, and when we continuously direct that energy into the same negative cycle, we deplete ourselves. Rather than using our energy to understand the problem or find a way to overcome it, we expend it on rehashing it over and over. We engage in the emotional equivalent of a treadmill, running in place without making any real progress. And this constant focus on our troubles not only drains us, but often leaves others feeling similarly drained. The people we share our problems with can only offer so much support before they too begin to feel overwhelmed by the constant stream of negativity. In many ways, this is an invitation to reflect on where we place our energy. We often give our attention and resources to what we lack or what isn't working, and in doing so, we give that lack more power. But what if we were to redirect our energy toward the solutions or the opportunities for growth that these problems might present? What if, instead of dwelling on the issue itself, we focused on the possibilities for transformation, the lessons we could learn from the experience? By shifting our focus from the problem to the process of overcoming it, we can begin to change the way we engage with challenges. When we direct our energy toward understanding rather than complaining, we begin to see the problem from a different perspective. Instead of viewing it as an insurmountable obstacle, we start to see it as a puzzle, a challenge that we have the capacity to solve. The key is in how we manage the energy we pour into our thoughts. If we allow our energy to remain stagnant, stuck in a cycle of problem talk, we only reinforce the situation. But if we redirect that energy, if we use it to explore solutions, to understand ourselves more deeply, we transform the very nature of the problem. What was once a